really all around the world, not just in Greece, but even here in the United States, we're seeing a kind of decline of real wages of American workers and American middle-class people, and we're seeing also at the same time a rise of a new class of international individuals who have oftentimes tens of billions of dollars. Goldman Sachs, they're manipulating the system. They're giving themselves billions of dollars of bonuses, and the little man is suffering. And what makes it worse from our point of view is that Congress in 2008 basically bailed out a lot of the companies connected to Goldman Sachs. But let me ask you this. It's been alleged that Goldman Sachs conspired to help Greece hide the true economic situation that was going on, including the amount of debt. Is that true? Do you have any comments on what Goldman Sachs did?
Okay, I will tell you. When Greece entered in the Eurozone in 2001, that period of time, Prime Minister was Mr. Kostas Simitis, a man who of Jewish roots, and a man that voted a special law, Greece to be borrowed only from specific banks. So now Greece has the obligation, because this law remains, and none of these governments that followed changed this law, must get loans from very specific banks. So if one government, for example, wants to edit new bonds and say to the population, to the Greek population, because now the interest rates, if you have a deposit account in a bank in Greece, is too low, is 0.2, for example, or 0.1. If we'll tell even for 2 or 3% is much money, and many Greeks will go to buy these bonds. So now there is not such a possibility, to be done, because we have traitors who run the politics in Greece. And now concerning your question about Goldman Sachs, there was a policy that started from Simitis and continued afterwards by Kostas Karamanlis, and the same policy is from George Papandreou today, that they were buying the so-called toxic assets or toxic products, the derivatives, the default swaps and all this through Goldman Sachs. And Goldman Sachs were providing a know-how how to cook economics to hide, the real economic situation of Greece. And this started just before we entered to the Eurozone. In reality, Simitis cooked the economics to show that we have the standards to enter in Eurozone. And afterwards, the next government was cooking, the economics, and again and again and again. Yes, this is reality, and the 1/3 of our deficit is money that never were taken in Greece, were never given to the Greek government, neither to the Greek people. Why? Because this money were lost. In reality, for my point of view, were stolen by Goldman Sachs.
Well, I can imagine Goldman Sachs was making huge profits when they could get money. They could take money at 1%, and they could lend it to the Greek government for 5 or 6%. That's big money. So they're doing very well for themselves over at Goldman Sachs.
Yes, and what they do in reality, the Fed is spreading money under thin air. Then they go to the Fed, they borrow money with 0 point something, and then they go internationally and they give this money to the governments with 2, 3, 4%, and they're making as mediators crazy money from thin air.
And Aris, we recognize that. That's one of the biggest problems that we have here in the United States is when, and I hate to say it, is 1913 with Woodrow Wilson when he agreed to creating the Federal Reserve. And as you said, I mean, the Federal Reserve creates money out of thin air. There is no gold standard anymore. That's been long gone back in the, I believe it was finally dissolved in the 70s during Nixon, or even prior to that possibly. But the fact remains that they lend money as a cabal, and this is really a organized crime scheme. This is counterfeit money. There's nothing backed by it. And as you said, with regards to Goldman Sachs, what they've done is they understand that they own and run not just the Federal Reserve, and these are the Jews that run the Federal Reserve. 9 out of the 10 banks are run by Jews. I mean, the 10th bank might just be a guy. He might be Catholic for all I care, but he's probably Jewish somewhere along the lines. But regardless of that, they also run our government. The United States, when you look at all the dual citizenship people that run this country in the United States, they understood that that what was going to happen was going to happen, and that they would get these bailouts. Here's a question that I have that you probably question. Why did the United States bail out the banks for?
They were too big to fail.
Yeah, too big to fail. What do the Europeans think about that? I mean, not to change gears or anything, but I'd like to hear what are Europeans thinking about that.
Okay, is the international mafia. Mafia of the Zionist bankers who took over control of United States of America. And this is what the people understand. The problem is that the very same people, they have too much influence, not only in United States of America, but all over Europe. And the governments are just puppets of these international financial interests.
Right, and that's kind of what we talk about all the time and what we're seeing. It's not just America. It's pretty much all white countries. And it's frustrating to me to watch this happen, to hear these stories, to talk to you, and to just see how they are milking everything. Because the reality is, and it's just like what Hitler did right after he came to power, and he kicked out all the Zionists, all the Jews, whatever they want to call them, and said, we're going to be rated based on our merits of what we produce. We produce great